Hey, Composing Gloves here. I'm wearing a hat, and today we're going to be looking at 3/4 time signatures. Well, we're going to be looking at the waltz in particular. There are actually other forms that use this. We are not going to delve into form. This is a series about rhythm, not about form. So right now we're just going to look at the waltz and how it is dealt with. And so I've written this waltz. It's indeed in 3/4 time. And as we have learned, different meters will invite different styles of writing. And so we know in this case it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. If this whole meter thing and stuff's like musical gibberish to you, check out the beginning of this series and it will become less gibberish. But what we're going to do is you'll notice here, I have a very simple thing. I have this thing that goes up and down, hitting the one of the chord and the fifth of the chord. I omit the third. So generally you don't want to do that. You kind of want to define it, but I left it undefined on purpose. Then I have a melody playing. And so this melody is going. You'll notice the melody has stagnant velocities right now, but you can still extract a meter because these things will line up and naturally enhances the beat. That's what we're going to be looking at in this particular example. So let me play for you just this little segment. So you see, it's very easy to go, oh, do, 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 do. And later on, I enhance it quite a bit more. What we're going to do, though, in this section is we are going to add velocities into there. But let me just show you this section over here. And you notice there's quite a bit going on there, but it all serves the same rhythmic purpose, and I stay harmonically very safe. And so that creates this very nice back and forth motion. It's very easy to follow. So let me open this up. And what we're going to look at is we're going to add velocities into this to give it more of a sense of meter. This actually isn't all that bad. And in some cases, people will compress it to the point where it's pretty much this. But we're not talking about mixing, but that's something that we should also be aware of, is that the way we mix things will alter the rhythm. For example, if you compress, you'll lose your dynamic range and the rhythm will suffer. Plus a number of other things could go wrong. Or not go wrong, but will change. So here we've got our basic rhythm, and this is giving us a really strong sense. Although if this was all stagnant, we'd still sense the rhythm. Why is that? Well, it's because of how things line up. We have just different things happening at different moments, and as we detect what scale we're in, we will begin to notice what notes are more important than other notes, and that will aid us in finding the meter. Along with besides all that, just the fact of the way things line up and what things are used as passing notes and stuff will also cue us in. So like, for example, this right here has a little more motion, but we have this steady thing going on one, which is going to be a very strong anchor to us. Okay, so those are some things, but let's go ahead and do this. So we have this beat 1. It's pretty important. Let's make beat 1 be like yay loud on average. Okay, and then this guy, we'll make him a bit softer because he's not as important. And then we'll go up and we will arrive here. Now, another thing to keep in mind that we're not going to delve into right now is the harmonic role that these notes play in the chords we're playing. Typically, you want to enhance the 1. You want to make it very easy for the listener to tell what key you're in. This is sort of an academic approach. A less academic approach, more creative approach would, you'd do weird stuff. You'd put accents on the 5th way more than the 1, and then throw the listener off a little bit. Stuff like that. And it would give the impression, almost the impression of a mode, but it wouldn't be a mode. So you could do weird stuff like that. But we're not going to do weird stuff like that right now. We're going to keep it pretty academically safe. And we'll just do something like this. So, yeah, next week for me is finals. I'm pretty excited about that. So you see, I am just coming through here. And now this guy is going to be more important than this guy. But naturally, these things look like crescendos. Except for, and this is a little bit of an unusual case. This is one where we go down and out, but it's like 2 runs. And so whether this guy finishes this guy is like totally up to you. Whether this actually gets softer and that gets louder, it's all up to you. It's a matter of phrasing. So there are like general guidelines for like the way things should go, but in those cases you have quite a few options. So now I noticed that mine aren't that extreme. The way you judge you're putting down your velocities with stuff like this is it depends on how responsive the thing you are working with is. If the thing you are working with, for example, so we put a meter in here, and we see that in this case I went down and up, and we will listen to the difference. And then this guy is gonna call out. So this is gonna be the last note of it, and it's gonna push us back into the one. So I'm gonna make it pretty slightly loud. It's also the tonic, and it's gonna go up an octave. So this is gonna be kind of a nice thing if I were to loop this, but I don't loop it. I believe I go into a whole new section. But let's go ahead and listen to it. Now, oh yeah, velocities. So the velocities, some sample libraries, you move it past a certain velocity level and it will trigger a new sample. So you do not want to use enormous velocity changes, because then you'll get entirely different samples, and some of them don't do the best job at that transition. So you want to just be aware where that break is, and you'll find it because it won't sound very good. Other things like synths can have a much larger, you can make these things have much bigger differences. Because I'm working with the Bell sample library, I keep mine relatively moderate. And also, you don't want to make it so big that later on you have to compress it, because that's counterintuitive. Usually, yeah, if you're going to limit your dynamic range, just rewrite your velocities differently, unless you're going for that sort of a thing. Occasionally, or you did it and now you regret doing it. Well, then the easy way out is sort of compressor rather than go back and rewrite all the velocities. But usually you can pinpoint the ones that are the offending ones, and you can fix those. So here is it now with our velocity enhancements. So it'll be subtle, but there will be a difference in the ability to. It'll just feel more natural. So you see, it's way more dynamic. This is actually a bigger difference than I thought. Those clicks were from processing, so don't worry too much about that. It was loading up new samples. Was what I think was going on there. So, and that's again because I'm playing. I think it's triggering different samples. I'm using the standard Glock sound or the standard Celestia sound from the Contact standard library, whatever it's called. So that's a pretty big difference. Now, if we come over here. Let's look at this. So anyways, that's like a little bit of adding in velocities and stuff. And in 3/4, we're starting to push the one as the most important. Let's actually, before we move on, take a look at those two different elements. So we have this guy right here, and it came out like this. And remember how we were deciding whether or not we wanted this guy to be, the point at which, like, do we want this to crescendo into this? Now, visually, it looks like it should get softer and then louder, but that's just visually. You don't go for visual crap. Go for what you hear. That's your ear is your final judge. So here we go. I quite like that. It's got this nice feel to it. Now let's come over here to this other one. Now this is another thing to keep in mind is where this plays a role in the phrase. So we're looking at this and we clearly have these two 4-bar phrases. They're pretty easily outlined. So this guy is going to be sort of a calling card to get back to this guy or whatever the next section is going to be. So he also plays a different role. That's something that as a creative person you should be aware of is what these things do. And so, well, unless you want to just be completely unaware, some people do that. They literally listen to nobody else's music except their own, because then it will be like they feel it will be more pure. And so some people do, but whatever. I prefer to be, a little more aware. So you see that has a very different feel. Let's compare them. So we have this guy over here versus. So you see this one has a much more forward quality, and because we were denied that one, I think this might be one of the few ones where I didn't emphasize the one as the biggest beat. This one's pretty weak too. These ones are all sort of weak. This one's substantially lower, and so it creates this like, what is going on? And because it's going to call into the next one, it fits very naturally. It makes a lot of sense right there. However, you'll find that both of them, they'll sound pretty nice. It's totally a matter of opinion, really, when it comes down to it. So it's whatever you like, but you're aware of meter and sort of what's going on here. We haven't gotten into like larger phrases, but that's pretty much like we're being aware of the bigger picture here. Now let's come over here to this guy, and you'll notice there's quite a bit more going on. Well, let's look at this one. Now on this one, I again do not have velocities. Don't worry, we're not going to put velocities in, but I change up the melody, and you notice I get quite a bit more extravagant with the range. But something that I do is I add in this bell line. It's a glockenspiel, and it's simply outlining the ones. It's aiding in that the one is the most important. And because it does that, it fits really nicely. And I'm staying really safe, like C, G. Most of the song is just going between those two chords. There is an F chord occasionally, which would be the 4. Now you see here I have these guys right here, these like ones that sort of bleed over. This is giving us emphasis to push us into 1. Now, they're of the same velocity, and if I really wanted to make it more dynamic, I could do something like this and sort of make them softer. And another thing you could do, which is sort of counterintuitive, is you could actually make these louder. Then it goes dun dun. And by de-emphasizing on the 1, because you're so used to hearing the 1, you'll still place the emphasis on the 1, but it will be reached in a different sort of more relaxing way. So that's more of a feel thing, getting the feel right with your rhythm. I prefer to push into the 1 in this case. So I believe those are all the ones that push over. So if we were to listen to this now. So it's quite nice. Now let's come down. There should be another bell line. It's a music box, of course. That's the Glock. So that was the Glock we were messing with. Okay, cool. But this is the music box. So I picked a music box. It has a nice bell tone. You notice this one is outlining all 3 beats. And in this case, we are deriving it not because of these velocities, but because of how things are lining up. Now, we could emphasize things along the way and do something like this, right? And depending on the notes and the roles they play, we could choose to de-emphasize or not emphasize it. Now this one's a run in, so do. So we're gonna, well, not in that particular case, it goes down, but we're gonna do something like that, a little crescendo in, and then it's pretty simple deal. Now these guys are arpeggiations, so we have C, E, G. And then this is a little strange here because we go A, B, D. So that's a little bit of a weird one. Sort of a fancier little deal going on there. I did not do it intentionally. I was just writing notes. That's what sounded right there. I wasn't like thinking, oh, let me put an A and a B here. I believe the A is there because this is where the F chord lies. But then the B, I don't know why. I was just in the mode of thinking it was a G probably, and it fit. Let's try moving this to an F and this to a C. Yeah, yep. See, there you go. You never know when you'll find stuff like that. Now, this guy is pretty loud, actually. Now, I have the benefit of already having the plugins I'm going to have on my master bus, like, already there. I've got an instance of Ozone 7 and a couple other limiter. Pretty simple stuff because this does not need anything, like, extreme. So Ozone's barely doing anything at all. It's just pushing it up against the ceiling, basically. Just making sure I'm filling up my dynamic range. Something like this does not, like, call for compression or anything crazy. So anyways, that is the 3/4. That's my 2 cents on the 3/4. Those are some observations that we can have when working with it. That's the basic, a very simple waltz. But you see, we're outlining just those beats with our bass, and those are some thoughts you could have while you're working on writing one and putting down the velocities to create a more dynamic, interesting thing. Because a lot of times when you're looking down there, you're like, how do I pick what velocities to put things at? Well, those are some of the considerations you could have. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.